position within a special interest organization. Butina was charged with trying to establish a back channel with U.S. officials and organizations, including the NRA, under the direction of high-level officials in the Russian government, which she has pled not guilty to. The Russian Foreign Ministry responded to Butina's arrest, tweeting a statement from its spokeswoman, quote, "It looks as if the FBI, instead of carrying out their responsibility of fighting crime, is implementing a political put-up job set to it by forces that are whipping up anti-Russia hysteria in the U.S. Joining us now, Matt Apuzzo, New York Times investigative reporter, and Paul Butler, former federal prosecutor, now a Georgetown law professor, both of them on Red Sparrow duty today. Take us inside.
Today we're covering the latest episode of The Americans. What's so interesting about this is we now know why the FBI had to rush to arrest Maria Butina over the weekend. It turns out that she was packing up her things and moving money overseas, and when the FBI came to arrest her, they found all of her stuff in boxes and a note to her landlord terminating her lease. It appears the latest round of Mueller crackdown may have inspired her to return to Russia.
The indictment on Friday of the 13th.
Exactly right. And
she was here.
She was here. Exactly. She was here. She was operating, what the federal government is alleging is that she was operating as an unregistered foreign agent, essentially operating, and they don't call her a spy, but the description is she's operating as a spy. She's operating clandestinely. She's answering to a top, Russian official. They have emails and Twitter messages exchanged. I mean, she basically is being compared to the embedded in these emails. She's being compared to the Russian illegals that were living among us for years.
Paul Butler, talk about what this means about how the Justice Department is approaching Russian aggression on a parallel track, really, to the soundtrack being presented to the country and the Congress by Donald Trump.
Yeah, so we have this indictment that suggests that Maria Butina is operating this back channel between the Russian government and the Republican Party to try to funnel money through a group that sounds like the NRA. She's posing as a student, and yet she's in constant contact with Russian intelligence officers, and she's tried to arrange a meeting between Trump and Putin. But she's not charged with espionage. She's charged with these relatively low-level crimes, failing to register as a foreign agent. Nicole, prosecutors don't always reveal their whole hand, so stay tuned. This is not the last time we're going to hear about Maria Butina. I think Robert Mueller is really interested in what she has to say.
Jeremy Bash?
Yeah, look, I think, like Matt said, this is like now season 7 of The Americans. This harkens back to the 2010 arrest of about a dozen Russian illegals who were run by the Russian intelligence services. They were living under deep cover for many years in the United States. One of the interesting notes from today's court filings was the tradecraft she employed, including, it appears, engaging in cohabitation, if we can keep it to PG-13, Nicole, cohabitation with a 56-year-old American. And so this is the biannual reminder to any 50-year-old male: when a 20-something Russian finds you extraordinarily attractive, something is amiss. Okay? It's probably a Russian government operation. We've seen that. Exactly. We've seen that tradecraft. But just take out your bingo card for one more moment, Nicole, because I want to just connect a couple of the dots. First of all, the Russian illegals in 2010 were sent back to Russia. Remember Anna Chapman? One of the individuals who got free, who we got out, was Skripal, the individual who the Russians tried to assassinate on the streets of the UK recently. Who investigated for the FBI, the Russian illegal operation? Bob Mueller. He knows the Russian file very well. And who ordered the Russian illegals operation from the beginning? Who was a line-end officer for the KGB back in the day? Vladimir Putin.
Well, you know, if she's a spy, she's a really lousy spy, because at the same time that she picks up these federal charges from the federal prosecutors in D.C., she's also under investigation by federal prosecutors in South Dakota and the FEC for campaign violations, and the Senate Intelligence Committee. There was another part of today's hearing that was very much like an Americans episode. So the prosecutors say no bail because she's a flight risk, and in fact, Russian agents might try to whisk her away. And guess what? Her defense attorney agrees and says, in fact, there are people from the Russian consulate who are in the courtroom today.
Matt, can you talk about step back a little bit and talk about the bigger picture? What does this tell us about how the Justice Department, I don't know if this came out of the National Security Division or counterintelligence, but what does it tell us about how they are aggressively pursuing Russians in this country? Charging people under FARA violations is not that common, right?
Not common at all. And this came out of the National Security Division at DOJ rather than
the Mueller
shop. And our understanding is that this investigation began pre-Mueller. And then as they were sort of carving up the world when Bob Mueller came on board, it actually sort of stayed with the National Security Division, but Mueller was sort of getting the regular updates on this because it was relevant. What's interesting to me is this began in 2013 and 2014 at a time when Russia was seeing Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio as potential
threats.
Right, and these guys are not pro-Russia, and so they were saying, well, we're going to have to move the Republican Party a little bit towards Russia. How do we do that? And then they said, well, man, let's use religious organizations and let's use the NRA, and we can make our contacts and we can try to move the needle a little bit. And I think Donald Trump wasn't even on their radar screen at that point. And then obviously he comes in and is this sort of surprise candidate, and suddenly he has pro-Russia views. And so I mean, you can imagine them being like, wow, this is great.
And talk about that. I mean, Harry Litman said on this program that this is collusion, and it may not be the kind that Bob Mueller is looking for, but this is the intersection of foreign interference and assisting with political efforts, political plays in our democracy.
Right. I mean, that's why I've always said this. Collusion is like, what do I do with that word, right? Because what does it mean, right? We've known that foreign governments are trying to influence our politics. It's really unusual that the federal government lays bare kind of how this goes down. And I do think, as Paul said, I think what you're going to see, because this was a hurried case, because they had to make the arrest over the weekend, this is only a criminal complaint. There actually hasn't been an indictment yet. So I do expect we'll see, additional charges in the indictment, or at least a more fulsome and formal accusation by the Justice Department soon.
Aaron, let's get back to the sex. She is. I'm just kidding. I do want to change the channel here. But there are questions about the NRA and money in the Trump campaign, and it is possible that as you sort of peel off the layers of the onion, there is more information.